What's going on, guys, and welcome to the channel. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. We are going to be going over a historic anthology which I have created, which full of cards which I think would benefit Arena greatly for both the player and experience. All of the cards in this list are extremely fun to play, and this is only my personal selection. If you do have any cards that you would like to see come to Arena, please let me know with a comment down below. And if you think any of these cards might be too broken or some combos, also let me know what you think would break them on Arena. So this is my personal MTG Jank Decks Historic Anthology. Let's get straight into it. The first is, I believe that Arena should add the different varieties of swords into the game. I think we only have one currently in the game, Sword of Body and Mind, which is incredible anyway. Gives you protection from green and from blue. Creature gets +2/+2. When it deals combat damage, opponent mills 10 cards and you create a 2/2 green creature. But I think having the rest of the swords in play on Arena would be a whole lot of fun. So we have Sword of Feast and Famine, gives a creature +2/+2, protection from black and from green. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card and you untap all lands you control. And I will say, what I do like about the swords is, because they're colorless, they can just go in any deck, and I also think it would spice up best of threes as well, because you can put them in your sideboards, and I think your opponents would also have to run quite a bit more artifact removal. All the swords give +2/+2, so I will just skip over from saying that. Sword of Light and Shadow gives protection from white and from black, and whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you gain 3 life, and then you can return 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. I can see a lot of decks that this would fit very nicely in. We have Sword of Hearth and Home, again +2/+2, it gives protection from green and from white. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, exile up to 1 target creature you own, search your library for a basic land card, and then put them back onto the battlefield. So this would work well if you just want to get out lands, or if you have flicker effects and enter the battlefield effects. I think there's a lot of interesting things that would happen on Arena if these cards came to the game. And then finally, Sword of Fire and Ice, protection from red and from blue. Whenever you deal combat damage to a player, you deal 2 damage to target creature or player, and you draw a card. Maybe a little less powerful than the other ones, but I still do think protection from red and from blue could be very useful, and also I think this could help shape and help out with the meta a little bit as well. On to the next ones, 2 absolute meme cards that are personal favorites of mine, Progenitus and Reaper King. So Progenitus is quite well known in the circles of Magic the Gathering. It is a 10 mana, 2 of each color, 10/10, protection from everything, which is nuts. And if you put it into a graveyard from anywhere, reveal it and shuffle it into its owner's library instead, that's there to stop reanimation spells and to get Progenitus down on turn 4 or something like that. But I think it'd just be a lot of fun to add it in, and it's so expensive and you need so many mana of different color. It's not like it's going to be in every single deck. And then we have Reaper King, a card which I put in this list because I'm currently building a commander deck with it, and I just think it's hilarious. So it's 1 of each color or 10 colorless. And it's a 6/6, and it reads, other scarecrow creatures you control get +1/+1. There really aren't that many scarecrows ever printed on Magic, but it's its ability that is just the epitome of what I think is fantastic. And it states, whenever another scarecrow comes into play under your control, destroy target permanent. That could be lands, enchantments, artifacts, it doesn't matter. But the way that I think this card actually fits into Arena is it only really works in Changeling and Shapeshifter decks. And I personally want to play the meme of having Maskwood Nexus and the Reaper King, and every creature I play is technically a scarecrow, and you can just start annihilating your opponent's board. Let me know what you think about this one in the comments down below. I just think it's perfect jank, really. On to the next, we're going to go into some blue cards, and some of you may disagree with me on this one, and that is fine, but we also have to remember some of the other cards that anthologies have brought in, like Ulamog, Avacyn, Soul Warden, stuff like this. So I think Rhystic Study could find its place on Arena. Of course, whenever opponent plays a spell, if they don't pay 1, you may draw a card. And then we have Royal Elemental, 6 mana, 3/2. So it is very easy to remove it, and it's probably not going to be the best against red decks or anything with fight spells. It's a 3/2 with flying, with the landfall ability of whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain control of target creature as long as you control Royal Elemental. So, I mean, there are plenty of creature cards that exist on Arena already that if they stick around long enough and they don't get removed, you kind of do win, or they give you a massive advantage. So I think Royal Elemental could fit in quite nicely. Then the other 2 blue cards that I would like to see come to Arena would be Consecrated Sphinx, 6 mana, 4/6 with flying. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you may draw 2 cards. And you may think that there are probably already enough blue draw spells in here, but I also think this gives a chance for dual or tricolored decks to have a good amount of card draw. And I say this now, but if they ever do add it, maybe I'll regret putting it on this list. And then the other one is telepathy, because I just think it's hilarious to see all the cards in your opponent's hand, and I do think it'd be nice. I think it will work best to play this against control decks, because control, yeah, they get the advantage of knowing what they might want to counter instead of this, but I think telepathy would give every other deck a bit of a step up against control, because you'll be able to see exactly what removal they have or what counter spells they may have, and you can play around it. And if not, I just think it's an all-around funny card. The next two go into the Gruul colors. We have Kaluth, Unrivaled Ancient, maybe I'm pronouncing that wrong, I don't know. A 7-mana, 4/4 flying and haste, big legendary dragon, which I think everybody's always happy to see. And it reads that whenever it attacks, you add X mana in any combination of colors, where X is the total power of attacking creatures you control. You can spend this mana only to cast spells. Until the end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end, which is quite nice, because as you attack in, you're actually going to get the mana during combat, and then at least when combat passes, you can still cast it. And it does have a heavy cost to it anyway. I don't think it's going to break the game by helping to cheat out massive spells very quickly, because if you can already get it down on the battlefield, well, then you already have the ability to get a 7-mana creature in play. And the next one is Dragon Lair Spider, a 6-mana 5/6 with reach. And just simply, whenever an opponent casts a spell, you put a 1/1 green insect creature token onto the battlefield. The tokens don't have reach or any abilities, but I think this would also be a little bit of a nice counter to control decks or to mass creature spells, or for example, let's say an elf deck, because every time they're casting something, you're also making a creature, which is going to be a good blocker. The only thing it would fall is against something with like mono white life gain with Soul Warden, but I think it'd be a fun card. I think it'd be a fun card to add. Just let me know what your opinions are on these in the comments down below, and don't flame me too hard if you completely disagree with these, but I would like to know your opinions. The next we go on to some white cards, and I think because they brought back the meld mechanic in the Brothers War, I got to thinking, what other meld cards are there? And these two are some of my favorites, and there is nothing more satisfying than having both of these down and being able to flip them. So one is Gisela the Broken Blade, 4-mana, 4/3 flying, first strike, lifelink, solid card already, don't think anyone will complain about that. And it states, at the beginning of your end step, if you both own and control Jissa and Bruna, then you exile and you meld them together to form Brisella, Voice of Nightmares. We'll get onto that card in a second. Bruna, the Fading Light, 7-mana, 5/7 flying and vigilance, solid stats, but when you cast it, you may return target angel or human creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. If you don't have Gisela in the graveyard, you can pick up anything else, any other angel or human. I think it'd be a solid fit to Arena, but if you have Gisela in the graveyard or they're both on the battlefield and they meld together, it forms Brisella, Voice of Nightmares, this absolutely horrifying Eldrazi angel, and I love the combination of creature types having an Eldrazi angel. It is a 9/10 flying, first strike, vigilance, lifelink, and your opponents can't cast spells with converted mana cost 3 or less. In the grand scheme of things, comparing it to other meld cards like Urza the Planeswalker or Mishra Lost of Phyrexia, I do think it would fit in rather well, and it is very difficult to meld as well, but I'd be very happy to see this onto Arena, because I mean, one, I love Eldrazi's, and two, I think having an Eldrazi Angel is just hilarious. And they are also bringing more Eldrazi's to Arena. At the moment, we already have Ulamog, and I believe in the next Anthology they're adding soon, it's going to be bringing Kozilek in. So I think Brisella could find its place on Arena. Then we go on to a couple of artifacts that I do think would just be a lot of fun to play. One is Manascape Refractor, 3-mana artifact that enters tapped, and it has all activated abilities of all lands on the battlefield, regardless if they're under your control or your opponent's, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any colour to pay the activation cost. So I think this should come to Arena, because I do believe it. I think this would be a nice counter to decks that play a lot of the lands which have activated abilities, you know, like Den of the Bugbear or Hall of the Storm Giants. And also, I don't know, I think it could be quite fun. And if you run them yourself, then you get to double up the abilities, because this actually will become a creature. And I think it'd be a nice fit. The next one to add is Urza's Incubator. 3-mana artifact, you choose a creature type, simple enough, creature spells of the chosen type cost 2 less to cast. It's a good 3-drop, makes everything a little bit cheaper, and I think just with all of the artifact removal we have on Arena at the moment, I think this would be a fair one to add. Next, I would like to see Mirage Mirror and Blasphemous Act. And Blasphemous Act is a 9-mana sorcery, It looks really expensive, but it does have the reduction of costing 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield. And when you play it, it's going to deal 13 damage to each creature. I just think it's a solid board wipe or just mass removal spell that would fit quite well into any deck that runs red, and I would like to see it. Next, we go on to 2 cards that I added to this list as a bit of a meme because I think it'd be hilarious to see them. You have Jester's Mask, a 5-mana artifact, and I get if you guys would never want to see this card come to Arena because I think it's just it's a nuts card. So it enters the play tapped. For 1 mana and tapping it, you sacrifice it and you look through target opponent's hand and library, and then you give that player a whole new hand of as many cards as they had before, and then they reshuffle the cards that you took out of their hand into their library afterwards. Just from thinking about this card, the only real way I think anyone would play it is just to get rid of your opponent's hand and only give them lands. I think it's kind of hilarious. It might be a little bit overpowered for Arena, especially if you can bring it back to the battlefield, and basically you're just messing your opponent's hand up every single time that you can actually activate it, and you're just going to give them all lands. Or you can look through it, and if they have all the answers for your board state, you just get rid of it and probably give them lands. And we have Wondrous Crucible. I believe this card came out in the Brothers War Commander set, so it's definitely not on Arena. 7-mana artifact, permanents you control have Ward 2, and at the beginning of your end step, you mill 2 cards, and then you exile a non-land card from your graveyard at random, and you copy it, and you can cast the copy without paying its mana cost. And it's a very strong ability, but I think it is going to be relatively balanced in the grand scheme of things, seeing as we do have cards like Arcade Bombardment and God Pharaoh's Gift, I believe, the 7-mana artifact at the beginning of combat. You pick a creature from your graveyard and you exile it, you make a copy that's a 4/4 zombie on the battlefield with haste. And these are my cards. I do hope you enjoyed. Please let me know what you think of the list I've made and any other cards that you would like to see come to Arena. I'd be really interested to know what cards you guys like to play and what cards you just wish you could actually play. I do have to give an honourable shout out to a couple of cards that I was tempted to put into this list, but I decided against it because I thought they might be a little bit too powerful, such as Sol Ring. Like, Sol Ring is one of my all-time favourite cards. Drop it down for 1, taps for 2 colourless, but I can see how on Arena it would just be a little bit overpowered, especially in artifact decks, because there is no reason not to run 4 of them in an artifact deck, or at least 1 or 2 copies in basically every deck anyone may build. But that is the list. I do hope you enjoyed the video. Please let me know what you thought and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And also, if you'd like to see more of these types of videos, please let me know as well. But for now, I hope you all have a great day.
Heartbroken.